Good afternoon. This week's Parsha is dedicated by Dvora Shapira in gratitude to all the goodness that Hashem has bestowed on her and her family. And we want to thank her for such a unique, different type of dedication. Parshat Devarim, as we all know, starts off with the criticism, the review of that Moshe Rabbeinu does on the history of the Jewish people just before 6 weeks before he passes on, and he passes on, and the Jewish people go into Eretz Yisrael. Took place on the 1st of Shvat, and Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on the 7th of Adar. And the beginning of Devarim is all about Moshe Rabbeinu criticizing the Jewish people, giving them reproof. And Rashi already tells us that in the opening verses that there's certain principles of criticism that we learn from the way and the manner and the timing of Moshe Rabbeinu's criticism of himself. Number one, that he waited until the end of his days before he criticized Bnei Israel. He was very careful to guard their honor. He learned a lot of this from Rashi says, quoting the Sifri, from the way that David HaMelech criticized Shlomo and the way that Yaakov criticized his children. So we learned a lot of principles of criticism. Not to say things if they're not going to be accepted. The timing is very important. He waited, just like Yaakov waited till his dying day before he spoke to Reuven, because he was afraid that Reuven would not know how to handle the criticism and bolt and go and join Esav. So also, this is how Moshe conducted himself with the criticism of and the hochacha, the reproof that he gave to Bnei Israel. And of course, it's not coincidental that the book of Devarim is always read before Tisha B'Av, because that's the theme of the criticism, the reproof, the rebuke that the prophets gave to the Jewish people, but unfortunately in that time it was to no avail. There's a very interesting Meshech Chochmah that speaks about the Haftorah of Parshat Chazon. And in there, he speaks not about principles of the person giving the reproof, but he gives principles of how to receive criticism, of how to be open to criticism. And one of the interesting things that he says is that the prophet, he reproves the Jewish people that they didn't receive the criticism. And one of the points, that's a very interesting point that the Meshech Chochmah says, is that they were criticized basically for the following. Sometimes people criticize us, people who are greater than us, and where our instinctive reaction is that, let's say we hear something from a great prophet or a great Rav, we would say, this person, he's in a different space, he's so holy, he's so unique. He doesn't understand where I'm coming from. He's so special. So the things that he said, they might even be true, but they seem remote to me. They seem too remote because they're coming from a source which is so unique, which is so special, that we think that the person doesn't know how to relate to our world. But Yeshayahu, what he says is that, quoting, and Meshech Chochmah quotes a Gemara from Masechet Shabbat, that the Jewish people didn't receive another type of criticism. And the criticism that they didn't get criticism from their fellow man, from their colleagues. See, there's many times that we're supposed to get criticism not because it's heard audially, but we're supposed to accept criticism from what we see. We see that many times that, I'll just give you one of the examples, that the Meshech Chochmah says, you see a person, he's got a colleague, he's got a friend, he's got someone that he knows from work or someone who's a good acquaintance with him, and he sees that that person's not so wealthy, he struggles a little bit, and yet he sees that his friend, he doesn't cut corners, he's very honest in his business dealings, he doesn't advertise in a way which is unethical. And he says that that was the criticism, that the people, that they didn't accept criticism, they didn't learn from their colleagues by example. many, many times we see, we have to listen to great rabbanim. We have to hear from our prophets and from our leaders. But just as much so, we part of anava, part of humility that we have to have is that we have to know how to, even if it's not spoken, to look around, to look at our people, our peers, our colleagues, who are basically on the same level as we are, and to learn not from the negative in them, but to learn from the positive in them. We should be open to be critical of ourselves when we compare ourselves to the way that our colleagues behave in a similar situation in us, and that they ignored at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, and that brought about the Churban. So this is what the Parsha begins and starts and ends with. The Parsha begins with principles of Moshe Rabbeinu teaching us how to criticize, how to rebuke, how to reprove. In the Haftorah, we have as a Meshech Chochmah teachings about how to receive and how to accept, how to have the humility to not only to learn from those who are greater than us, but also maybe dafka from our colleagues who are on the same part of us, and even if they don't criticize us, that we learn from their conduct how we should behave.